Before you scroll away, what if the burden you've been carrying was never yours to bear? What if the exhaustion you feel isn't proof that you're failing, but an invitation from God to finally let go? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could change the way you face every struggle for the rest of your life.
Have you ever noticed how the harder you try to control everything, the heavier life becomes? We convince ourselves that if we just work harder, worry more, and never stop pushing, we'll eventually find peace. But what if true peace isn't found through greater effort? What if it begins the moment you stop trying to be your own savior? That's the life-changing invitation Jesus gives in Matthew 11, and understanding it can transform not only your faith, but every part of your daily life. Most people spend their entire lives carrying invisible burdens: fear, anxiety, regret, financial pressure, broken relationships, and the constant feeling that everything depends on them. At first, those burdens seem manageable. You tell yourself you're strong enough, capable enough, determined enough. But over time, something begins to change. Your body grows tired, your mind never stops racing, and your heart loses the peace it once had. The more control you try to gain, the more control seems to slip through your fingers. That is exactly where Jesus steps into the story. He doesn't come offering another productivity system, another list of religious duties, or another impossible standard to meet. Instead, he offers one simple invitation: come to me. Those words are far more than comforting advice. They are an invitation to exchange self-reliance for divine strength, striving for surrender, and exhaustion for lasting rest. The remarkable truth is that Jesus isn't waiting for you to become stronger before he welcomes you. He's waiting for you to become honest enough to admit you're tired. And once you understand why that invitation changes everything, you'll never look at your burdens the same way again. Imagine two people facing exactly the same hardships. Both experience financial uncertainty, family struggles, unanswered prayers, and an uncertain future. From the outside, their circumstances appear almost identical, yet their lives couldn't feel more different. One wakes every morning convinced everything depends on their own strength. Every setback becomes another weight to carry, every delay another reason to panic, every unanswered question another sleepless night. The other person still faces the same valley, but walks through it with remarkable peace. Their confidence doesn't come from having easier circumstances or greater ability. It comes from knowing they no longer carry the burden alone. They have accepted Christ's invitation to release what never belonged to them in the first place. That difference changes everything. It isn't the size of the storm that determines your peace. It's who is carrying you through it. Once you truly grasp that truth, you'll begin to understand why so many sincere believers remain exhausted, even while faithfully trying to serve God. And that's where the next part of this journey becomes impossible to ignore. The deepest problem isn't weakness. It's our relentless desire for control. We try to control tomorrow before it arrives. We try to predict every outcome, prevent every disappointment, and solve problems that don't even exist yet. We mistake anxiety for responsibility and exhaustion for faithfulness. Society applauds constant busyness, convincing us that stress is evidence of importance. Even spiritually, many people believe God is most pleased when they are constantly striving. But Jesus completely overturns that mindset. He never asked his followers to become the source of their own strength. He invited them to remain close to him. Trying harder without depending on Christ is like rowing a boat that's still tied to the dock. You may exhaust yourself with endless effort, but you never actually move forward. That's why so many people feel trapped in the same cycle year after year. The problem isn't that they don't care enough. The problem is that they're carrying a weight designed only for God. And until that burden is finally surrendered, no amount of effort will ever produce the peace their hearts have been desperately searching for. The moment Jesus says, "Come to me," he doesn't stop there. He continues with words that many people overlook. "Take my yoke upon you." At first, that almost sounds like another burden, another responsibility to carry. But this is where everything changes. The yoke Jesus offers is nothing like the one the world has placed on your shoulders. The world tells you that your value depends on your performance, your success,
and your ability to keep everything together. Jesus says your value has already been settled by his love. In ancient times, an experienced ox was yoked beside a younger one, so the stronger animal carried most of the weight while gently guiding the weaker. That is the picture Jesus paints for every believer. He never intended you to face life independently. He never asked you to prove yourself through endless striving. He invites you into partnership with him, where his strength becomes greater than your weakness. Suddenly, the pressure begins to change. Your circumstances may still exist, but they no longer define your emotional state because your confidence is no longer rooted in yourself. Once you truly understand what it means to walk beside Christ instead of ahead of him, you begin to discover a kind of peace that circumstances cannot steal. This is why two believers can pray the same prayers, attend the same church, and read the same Bible, yet experience completely different lives internally. One continues living with clenched fists, desperately trying to force God's timing, worried that every delay means failure. The other chooses to trust even when answers don't arrive immediately. They still work diligently. They still make wise decisions. They still carry responsibilities, but they no longer carry the emotional weight of believing everything depends on them. That freedom creates something remarkable. Fear begins losing its authority. Anxiety stops dictating every decision. Hope quietly returns, not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because trust becomes stronger than uncertainty. Their joy no longer rises and falls with every circumstance, because it has become anchored to someone who never changes. This is the difference between simply believing in Jesus and actually walking with him every single day. One creates religion, the other creates transformation, and that transformation becomes most visible when life refuses to go according to plan. Think honestly about your own life for a moment. What burden have you secretly been carrying that God never asked you to hold? Is it the pressure to make everyone happy? The fear of disappointing people? Regret over past mistakes? Worry about your children's future? Financial uncertainty? The constant pressure to appear strong even when you're falling apart inside? Many people believe carrying those burdens proves they're responsible. In reality, it often reveals that they've forgotten where true strength comes from. Scripture never teaches that faithful people never face problems. It teaches that faithful people never face them alone. There is an enormous difference between responsibility and ownership. God calls you to obedience, faithfulness, and wise action. He never calls you to control outcomes that belong only to him. The moment you begin confusing those two roles, peace quietly disappears, and exhaustion quickly takes its place. But the moment you release ownership back to God, something remarkable happens inside your soul. Your breathing slows, your thoughts become clearer, your prayers become more sincere. You stop asking, "How can I fix everything?" and begin asking, "Lord, how do you want me to trust you today?" That single shift changes everything. Perhaps that's why Jesus never promised a life without storms. Instead, he promised his presence in the middle of them. The miracle isn't always that the mountain moves immediately. Sometimes the greater miracle is discovering you can stand before that mountain without fear, because you know you are no longer standing there alone. The same circumstances that once overwhelmed you become opportunities to witness God's faithfulness in ways you never imagined possible. Instead of measuring your future by your own limitations, you begin measuring it by God's promises. That is where genuine rest begins, not when every problem disappears, but when your heart finally understands that Christ is carrying what you never could. And once that truth settles deep within your spirit, you'll begin seeing every challenge, every delay, and every unanswered prayer through completely different eyes, leading to one final decision that has the power to transform your life forever. The invitation Jesus gives is still open today. It has never expired, and it has never been limited to people who have everything figured out. It is for those who are weary, discouraged, anxious, and overwhelmed. It is for the person who has spent years trying to earn peace through endless effort. It is for the believer who loves God, but secretly feels exhausted from carrying responsibilities that were never meant to rest on human shoulders. Jesus doesn't ask you to clean yourself up before coming to Him. He doesn't tell you to solve every problem first or wait until your faith feels stronger. He simply says, "Come. Bring your fears. Bring your unanswered prayers. Bring your broken dreams, your disappointments, your failures, your uncertainty about tomorrow, and every burden you've been hiding behind a smile." His invitation has always been about relationship before performance. The greatest mistake many people make is believing they must become worthy before approaching Christ, when the truth is that His presence is exactly what makes broken people whole. The journey toward lasting peace doesn't begin when life becomes perfect. It begins the moment you stop running from God with your burdens and start running toward Him with them. Imagine how different your life could become if every morning started with surrender instead of stress. Instead of waking up already overwhelmed by everything waiting for you, you would begin each day remembering that God is already present in every challenge before you arrive there. Every difficult conversation, every financial decision, every unexpected setback, and every unanswered question would no longer feel like evidence that you're alone. They would become opportunities to witness God's faithfulness in real time. Your confidence would no longer depend on whether circumstances improve quickly. It would rest on the unchanging character of the one who promised never to leave you. That doesn't eliminate responsibility, but it completely transforms the way you carry it. Peace becomes your foundation instead of your reward. Hope becomes stronger than fear. Faith becomes greater than doubt. You begin living from a place of rest instead of constantly chasing it. That is the life Jesus described. Not a life free from difficulties, but a life where difficulties no longer have the final word, because His presence becomes greater than every problem you face. So today, pause for a moment and ask yourself one honest question. What burden have you been carrying that belongs in God's hands instead of yours? Don't let another day pass believing that constant exhaustion is the normal Christian life. It isn't. God never intended anxiety to become your closest companion or fear to become your daily motivation. He created you to walk closely with Him, trusting His wisdom where your understanding ends and relying on His strength where yours runs out. Every step of faith begins with one simple decision: letting go of what you cannot control and trusting the one who always can. That decision may feel small in the moment, but it has the power to reshape your future, restore your joy, strengthen your faith, and renew your relationship with God in ways you never imagined possible. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't that God changes your situation immediately. Sometimes it's that He changes your heart so completely that your situation no longer controls your peace. If this message has spoken to your heart, don't let it become another encouraging video that you forget tomorrow. Let it become a turning point. Make the decision today to stop carrying what Christ has already invited you to release. If you're ready to trust Him with every burden, every fear, and every unanswered question, write in the comments, "Jesus, I trust you completely." Let those words become more than a comment. Let them become the prayer that marks the beginning of a new season in your life. And if you know someone who feels crushed by anxiety, overwhelmed by responsibility, or exhausted from trying to carry life alone, share this message with them. It may be the reminder God has been preparing for them all along. Remember, peace is not found in controlling every circumstance. Peace is found in walking every day with the one who already holds your future in His hands. Stay close to Him. Keep trusting His promises and never forget that the invitation to come has always been and will always be waiting for you.